The mechanics of saddling. Lynn Brown, saddle designer and builder, conducts saddle fit clinics in the United States and abroad. Through his Mechanics of Saddling video series, you'll learn about the physiology of the horse's back and how the muscles and skeletal system are affected by the saddle and the weight of the rider. You'll observe the proper technique for palpating a horse's back for soreness and how to assess the fit of your saddle. Lynn and Lisa Brown gained much of their basic knowledge about saddle fit on a 3,000-mile, 7.5-month horseback trip. This 1982 trip took them through 7 states, including the Rocky Mountains. Because of saddling problems they encountered and solved on the trip, the Browns returned home intent on making a better saddle. Thus evolved the OrthoFlex Performance Saddle. They introduced the first patented model in 1986 and are now the largest custom saddle manufacturer in the United States. Since then, they've doubled their growth each year. Here's Lynn at a saddle fitting clinic as he gives the first segment of The Mechanics of Saddling, an introduction to saddling and its history.
Hello, Lynn Brown here from OrthoFlex Saddle Company, and I want to do a short video to show you how to palpate your horse. Why do you want to palpate your horse? Number one, to see if your saddle's working. Number two, to see if your horse has had problems in the past. The other things you can tell are which lead your horse prefers, because almost all of our horses have one side they prefer over the other. Now, once you know which side your horse likes to lead on, you can tell that from the saddle, but you can tell it from the ground. You never have to get on a horse. If you're looking at buying a horse, knowing how to palpate the horse to see if he's been damaged severely through the spinous processes in the vertebral column, for instance, will show you that. That way, you don't get a horse that's got more problems than what you would want. In saddling, the best time to palpate your horse is the morning after you ride. Then you can see if you have a problem, because right after you get off, things are as either slightly numbed up or not as responsive as they'll be the next morning. Friction soring can be quite responsive after you get off the saddle. That's from too much movement. We'll show you how to check for that too. In doing this, first thing you don't want to do is to walk up and grab a horse and start poking on him or where the saddle is and so on. We want a horse that's relaxed and not a horse that's apprehensive and in his flight mode. Yeah, she said, what are you doing to me over here, huh? So walk up to the horse. See, he already is popping a head up. He's a little apprehensive here. We want to calm him down some so we get a natural reaction. And just a little bit of this. Stroke this neck once or twice so we don't have this muscle over-tighten on apprehension and a natural reflex to keep predators off that neck. This muscle is the levator humeri, called the brachiocephalicus in your modern day anatomical book, but the Latin name describes what it does. It elevates the humerus. It's what starts the extension of the front leg. Overwork a horse on the forehand and you overwork the levator humeri because he's overbalanced with possibly a heavy rider, a saddle too far forward. When I say heavy rider, I mean heavy on the forehand. And he's got to jerk that front leg out much harder. Easiest for him to do that, not only by using this muscle, but by throwing this head and neck up. When he throws that head and neck up, what does he do? He gains all the leverage for use of that cantilever action and tightening and contracting that muscle to jerk the front leg out. Now, the response I got here on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm working on the attachment point of this muscle. Take it easy. It ain't that bad. Response is about a 6. Now, what's a 10? They rear and they strike. It can be just contraction of muscles from overwork. This is called compensatory muscle soreness. He's compensating for his back not really functioning as it should, for a rider that's heavy in the stirrups, leaning forward, trotting all day long, whatever it may be. He's overusing this muscle. So compensatory soreness is what we have. That muscle is also going to be sore at the other attachment point because the attachment points get sore first. And if you watch right here, run her hand down the muscle, feels like a cable. The cable goes right down and under the point of the shoulder, and we hit that point right there and see what kind of reaction we have. Well, he's starting to like me, maybe, but he said it hurts a little. Not bad down here right now. Just a moment, there we go. I got the spot then. So if you're not sure you have the spot, it's just an inch either side. We don't have a tremendous reaction here. Not as bad as a 6 on the upper one, but more like a 3 or 4. When I started up here, this is where he's most bothered, as you can tell. Okay? When I do this, and I have some quivering of muscle clear into the shoulder, but I'm starting to relax this. Now, deep pressure therapy will go a long way then, but I've got the spot right there. And we're in there, but not quite as tight as we are at this point here. The end of most movement. Attachment points on a muscle are called the origin, the insertion. They get tight and sore before the belly of the muscle ever does. Once they've been tight for a long time, soreness travels, I should say contraction, sets in and it travels into the belly of the muscle. If that muscle is used in contraction, you can then get what's called spasm, which is knotting in the muscle, the belly of the muscle. This horse doesn't have any knotting in the belly of this muscle. I normally find 3 knots in a horse on the levator humeri. They use it mighty hard when the saddle isn't working. This horse has almost nothing, and it's typical to find a little bump right in here. If he's not real sore on it, you don't have to worry about it. It's kind of like part of the muscle. What's it like when you find a real spasm? A horse can be quite sore on it. And if you work what feels like spasm pretty hard, a little bit of tightness may be working into spasm, he will react quite violently to it. You have to work that out. It's like nature's glue. It sets in the contraction in the muscle, spasm does. It can be worked out with deep pressure therapy. So, in getting to know our horse, we started on the near side. We started up here next to the brain, and we have a horse that's not so afraid of us now. Just a little bit of niceness that I did like this. He said, well, the guy's not all bad, but he does hurt me some. Something you can do before you go on, pick this very tight point right here. Put a lot of pressure in it. You've got to have a pretty good sized hand. You can do it with 3 fingers here if you hold the other side of the horse's neck so you can push. And just hold that and let it relax the horse a little. Watch his eye get kind of soft, because this causes extra pain. It releases endorphins from the endocrine system that's activated by that pain to the brain, rather awakening the horse to what's happening in his body, and the body then going about fixing the problem. This is what deep pressure therapy is about. A little cross-fiber friction after that to make it hurt a little more, but very shortly it starts to feel so good. And we may wiggle her lip. We like it so much, huh, fella? Yeah. Okay. So right now this horse says, well, he's really not so bad when he palpates me. I can go around the rest of the horse. I can get a natural reaction without the flight mechanism and terrible apprehension the horse has of me hurting him because I'm, quote, just prodding on sore spots. Once you make him feel good in one place, you can then go much further on that one muscle. Now it's a different situation. Where I always like to check a horse is right here. This is the tricep. If this tricep is tight, horse is likely to go lame, have intermittent suspensory lameness. Reason being, we have an infraspinous, supraspinous set of muscles right here in the shoulder. And we have a little tightness in those muscles, as you can see. Okay? Hasn't traveled to the tricep yet. If it gets there, and this tightens, it wraps right around the ulna. Wrapping around the ulna from the other side is the deep flexor muscle, which the deep digital flexor tendon is attached to, and that is the anchor for the support cable of your horse's leg. That deep digital flexor tendon is not a rubber band. It has very little natural stretch as a tendon. It gets its travel from the deep flexor muscle in the forearm. Once we're tight here, if this soreness from the back travels through here and all the way to here, once we're tight on a tricep, and this is just one of 4 triceps, but the main one we're worried about. Once we're tight there, we will then, through this muscle, working with and against the tricep, this muscle will overwork and become tight and sore. When it does, we lose the natural shock absorption to the lower leg through the fetlock and the pastern, and rolling over the navicular causes some navicular problems too, folks. If you're extremely tight here, going all the way through here and down, with the pastern has to drop. This has to be loose. That's why you always want to check the tricep. And only in the horse world would we sell leg wraps that supposedly support this to the point that you lose the natural dropping and shock absorption that the horse needs. You lose it, he goes lame. So you figure that one out. Now, we check the infraspinous, supraspinous here and here. These can be caused by girth problems. For a long time, I was only concerned about what I was sitting on. And once checking enough orthoflex horses and finding some horses that were absolutely clean in the back, no problems, and then finding horses that might be sore through the girth area. That's something you want to look for. You also want to palpate the girth area right where the leading edge of the girth is possibly biting into muscle. And that muscle on the flat of the ribs here is very sensitive, as you know. The $3 strap that we use, unfortunately, tightens on that leading edge right there. It doesn't do this guy any good to ask him to turn if you've been riding him for a few months, and every time he hurts here already, and when he turns, it tightens a little more. So girthing is another situation. It takes more than a $3 strap to stay loose on these muscles. I'll show you that later when we get into saddling the horse. But the first thing I want to do to the back is determine whether I have a right lead horse or a left lead horse. I want to go like this and like this. If a horse has been ridden enough to give me a response to some friction, I can tell that right away. Hasn't been ridden quite enough here to tell me. About 90% of your horses are a left lead horse. In that situation, I'd have to go around the rest of this horse to see which side he's working on the hardest, which side of the neck he'll be the most sore on. I think we have a right lead horse here. So he may prefer the right lead. This horse is so close right here, I can't tell. But a very good test for telling is right here. I'm getting a little friction soaring on the right side, but it's so minute, little differential. So we'll leave that on this horse. Okay, why would I want to go ahead and run my fingertips down the back to determine whether we have a right or left lead animal? All of these animals like to lean on one forehand, on a right or a left leg. They like to lean on it as they operate. It also means that they're lazy on the diagonal, the opposite hind leg. So in doing this, it's their way of going. It's also your way of going. If you want to check it, get about a 3-pound or 4-pound weight, hold it in one hand and go jogging. If you're right-handed, hold it in your right hand. You'll feel fine. You're swinging back and forth. Flip it over to your left hand. It's going to throw you all out of time. In saddling, we'll talk about putting the horse back into another bit of timing to get him to work on the lead that he does not prefer. What he's doing is freeing up the side that he likes to operate lightly on. This is not something that's usually simply uncorrectable. On some horses it seems like it, but by palpating here, if the horse drops a right shoulder and leans on it, it means that he drops the saddle to that side. When he does, the saddle is heavy down low on the right. And that means the horse will be a little sore down low, right there, where the lower part of the bar hits him. It means that the upper wither right here will be catching the saddle as it drops to the right. In this case, we'd be talking a right lead horse, so, a left lead horse when this happens. So right here is where we'd be real sore, because the saddle catches right there to keep from rolling even further. The horse is pulling away from the pain down here, and this is catching more and more, so it's self-perpetuating. It gets worse and worse. You have to know how to saddle around it. We'll talk about that in basic saddling instructions. Why would we have a difference in loin? This horse hasn't been ridden too much lately, and if you ride a horse a lot at a trot and at speed, it'll be more prominent than it is at just a walk, but it becomes prominent on a trail riding horse at a walk. The saddle pops up back here on this side. It sits firm, even, and smooth on this side. You pick up movement here, and you will have then a flinching in the loin area. And if this horse was ridden enough, he would be flinching in the left loin. If he flinches in the left loin, he's a left lead horse. He drops his right shoulder, pops the saddle up in the opposite rear. That is how you can tell whether he's a left or right lead horse if he's been ridden recently and quite a bit. So that one is something you can put in your little information bank. Now, it's easy to palpate a horse right here and see how sore he is. But see, one side at a time tells more of a story. Even at the attachment point, I can try to pull this horse with 30, 40 pounds of pressure. Is he doing anything? You know where the saddle's dropping to. People call us and say, my saddle, something's wrong with it. It must be crooked. It drops to the right. 90% of the time it's to the right. Very seldom is it a right lead horse dropping to the left. You look at the rider, he's coming toward you on the horse, and you swear, why didn't that guy adjust his stirrups? The right stirrup's way too long. So when the horse drops on this shoulder, he throws a lot of rider weight into the stirrup on that side he likes to lean on. Pick up the horse's hooves. You're going to find a hoof on the underside, the sole of the hoof. On the right side, it's rather flat. He wears away the heel quite quickly. On the left side, it'll be much more concave, that really nice looking natural hoof you want on both sides. That is what it tells the rest of the story and lets you verify what you found up here. Now, we configure that if he's not sore on the top attachment point of the trapezius to the wither, on that side, he's not going to be very sore down here, is he? See? 50, 60 pounds on 2 fingers in here. We don't see anything. This is his side that he's free on, and he likes to move. So this is how you tell the rest of the story when you can't tell it by simply this. If the horse is ridden a lot, you'll catch it right here, and you can document it by going further. The thing you cannot do is to palpate a scapula, a shoulder, and really see what's happening under the saddle while the horse is standing. I have to pull the foreleg out, rotate the shoulder back to where it hits the saddle, and see what kind of problems we have. Now this is the, quote, free side, the one that doesn't have much pressure. Little interference with saddle, not bad. On a 1 to 10, it's about a 2. The other side, you can bet, will be a little more sore. Now, we're not going to hit him here on both sides. We already figured out what's going on. We will go on back to semi-membranosus. Let's walk this guy around and give his rear to the camera. Semi-membranosus is going to be 1.5 inches outside of the base of the tail. If you feel for it, you'll feel a little tight, like a cable, a tight spot right here. We palpate here, not bad. So see, I moved on either side. I don't find any tightness here. We try it over here on this side. This is our lazy side, isn't it? This is the side he doesn't really want to use. It's the side you pick up the movement on, but it's not very sore. Scale of 1 to 10, a little jump like that, again, and say 2. What is a 10? Both hind feet up in the air kicking out. But why would this muscle have anything to do? And by the way, the other attachment point's right down here. You got to watch. Cow kicking is possible. But why would a horse be working this too hard? Because of saddling. He starts the lightening of the forehand right down here to ground. These rearing muscles, the hamstrings, do play a large part. So do the gluteals from right here on the ilium forward, attaching onto these spinous processes that come out to the side. And it contracts one belly in the muscle right here. It contracts, and its only job is to start the lightening action of the forehand. Put a horse with a back that's locked down, or a rider too far forward, too heavy on the front, the gluteals fatigue very quickly, and then you have something in endurance riding or trail riding at a trot all day, and that is you have a fatigued back. Now, if that back, through riding an orthoflex, is carrying weight over a large area, it's not locking down, and it just fatigues starting at the gluteal and then through the longissimus dorsi, we are going to have a horse that pushes off without tightening the lower back. And that causes pushing off with the right. Our feet are not on the center line. Boom. The ass to the left. Left. Boom. To the right. And so they go down the trail. You ride behind a rider whose horse is in a power trot because they're leaning forward. A great instability of equilibrium in this horse now. So he has to trot faster. He has to jerk the front leg out further. He has to use his neck muscle more. He fatigues his back quickly. The orthoflex does not bite in, create pain, and cause the back to lock down, so it just fatigues. The rear end looks like somebody doing a cha-cha-cha back and forth all day long under the saddle. That is loin rubbing. What we do now is we shorten the panels as much as we can, and we ask, please, sit down in a seat we made for you. It's comfortable. Just try it and learn to post, move with horse, and stay in the seat, out of the stirrup, prevent the loin rubbing, prevent the fatigued back. Even with the short panels, we might not get the loin rubbing. Why do we want to prevent a fatigued back? To keep from overloading the forehand and causing a lameness situation. And I can tell you, even an orthoflex will cause fly jerk and some soreness here if the saddle is either too low in front, throwing the rider into this position, or if the rider is just there all the time on his own. A regular saddle will lock down this back. It will operate locked down. Typically, you do not get loin rubbing because both gluteals are contracting and the back is tightened down. That's not too good. It causes what's called spondylitis. Lee, bring this horse sideways here. Spondylitis or spondylosis is when a horse is pushing off from the hindquarters with his back tensed, like this, dropped. And this horse isn't sore enough to drop the back. But it doesn't have to drop a long ways on a straight-backed horse. Just the spinous process is pulled together, rubbing and impinging. Now, vertebra, think of it as the disc on these bottom two fingers. Actually 4 interlocking joint surfaces above the disc are these two fingers. The upper middle finger here is the spinous process in this picture, but they are quite close together. I wanted to illustrate to you that when the back is tensed down, it opens the disc, puts all of the pressure of compression on the little interlocking joint surfaces not made to take weight or compression, and pulls the disc together, the spinous processes together where they rub. So collection, and that is back up through opposing forces, is very necessary in this picture. The longissimus dorsi attaching here at the ilium, going all the way down from the upright spinous processes. It's segmented, attaches downward and forward to the rib cage, and goes under the shoulder and clear into the base of the neck from up in the high point of the withers. That muscle contracts segmented. If your horse is operating naturally, it contracts one side at a time. That means it contracts on the right so that the horse is pushing off with the right and takes a forward step, both front and rear, without simply pushing his body to the left, so to speak, and or interfering with hind legs. So in doing that, we have opposing forces to the longissimus dorsi. It is, and this is natural, by the way, for the semimembranosus to cause the horse to tuck in the rear and lift the back. Okay? So by palpating there, tightening the abdominals, head and neck down is a cantilever action, the supraspinous ligament, the nuchal ligament, lift and tighten the back. A longus coli muscle lying under the vertebral column in the chest cavity also contracts and lifts the back. All of these are opposing forces to doing what? Overcoming the powerful muscle action of the longissimus trying to do this. You try to bend something 2 different ways. You do this. You extend it. Extension is not measurable, as veterinarians have tried to do in Australia on a treadmill, electronically. Because if you have natural extension, it is the exact and opposing force to the natural compression. But it keeps you from doing this, which is going to tear your horse up from the inside, and all it takes is the pain from a thumbtack. And you can do that. Because as soon as the back works locked down, he's going to get kissing spines, spondylosis per se. The old school horse will possibly be so stiff through here that the vertebrae have fused through what's called anklosis. That is nature's way of stopping the pain. These horses have to walk around with a back tense, because if they move too much, the pain internally is terrible. If you get a response, and this is the only clinical test for spondylitis, the response is the horse then dropping the back from you just with your fingertip, rubbing the spinous processes. If that back drops 3 inches right here, you got a problem that's just started. Go to the racetrack like Churchill Downs. 2-year-olds in training and being raced will drop 3 to 4 inches or so already. Jumping horses, a big problem. Many other horses, even Western show horses, can have a problem here. And how bad is bad? The 3 inches is a 2 or 2.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Bad is an eventing horse that I can hold my arm outstretched he's 17 hands tall, and drop him to the ground. This kind of horse is cast in his stall every morning. And if you don't know what that means, it means he's laying upside down, legs against the wall, so he can rest. He cannot rest for one moment. He cannot relax his abdominal, because as soon as his back drops the slightest bit, the pain is more than he can take. That is a horse that's cast in a stall almost every time. You check it, you'll see. Okay, we have a semitendinosus that's about 5 to 6 inches outside of the semimembranosus, 4 to 5 really from the semimembranosus. It will feel like a tight attachment point right there. Quarter horses use this muscle a little harder than they do the semimembranosus. So we don't have a big problem on the hindquarters of this horse. He's still pretty loose. You palpate your horse and see how he is, then you'll know if you have a really severe saddling problem, or possibly if somebody's overloading the forehand and you're just sore here and you're sore here and you've got a little fly jerk here. I've seen that under orthoflex in distance riding. Okay, turn him around, Lee. We will palpate right quickly, then we're going to get a couple of other horses that should be quite different. Right here. Oh my gosh, look here. He doesn't want to use this side very bad, does he? He's quite sore on it. A different situation. We're more up into the 7 and the 7. This side's tighter than hell. Little wonder why he doesn't like to use it. Okay? We already determined the saddle. The bars are hitting right in here, in the trapezius. The shoulder rotates into the saddle, which we didn't have anything on the other side, right here. We have a whole different animal. You can't straighten this animal out until you straighten out the saddling situation, and then when he drops his right shoulder, it's not down to the right. It's either in the middle or a little to the left. You burden the left, free up the right, and then change your training some, and you have a different horse. And this is true whether it's English, Western, or no matter what kind of horse and riding that you do. That gives us, I think, a good illustration. We'll go to the next horse. Another horse, one nice looking horse, but we'll go ahead and palpate this horse. It's ridden a lot of hours in the saddle on this horse by a fairly good sized rider. So we don't go to sleep here. Oh, I already petted him right here a little bit while ago. Yeah. About a 6 right here. A whole lot tighter than we should be. Tension all the way down into the mouth. Quote, fitting problems. Yeah, relax a little fella. Okay, go down this muscle. It's tight, it's tight. He's very apprehensive all the way down. Fair bit of pain on the attachment points of this horse here. Right here. This horse has got a real problem under saddle, having to use his neck muscle, levator humeri, to jerk that front leg out way too much. Means we're going to be sore up in here. Means we're going to be a little tight in the hindquarters more than likely. It's hard to see a horse. When a horse is ridden a lot, especially like a distance horse, you're going to see the real overwork in these muscles. This is a trail-ridden horse, maybe some in show. We'll go down to the tricep now. We're still loose in the tricep. Infraspinous, supraspinous. We could expect them to be a little tight, not too bad. How much soreness do we have coming down from above? Some, but it hasn't traveled very far. Tells me one thing. It hasn't been there too long. If it would have been there a long time, then at that point, it would have gone on further. It would be more severe in here to match up with this. So interference of the saddle. Let's run our fingers down the loin. We have a pretty even horse. I can't tell you right now which side he prefers from this. It's pretty even. Right here at the top of the wither, he's sore. At the top of the shoulder on the right, he's sore at the top of the shoulder on the left. Well, let's go ahead and get down a little further here and see if we've got the trapezius that's hurt by a bar down there. We've got one that's hurt by a bar over here. He's bending a little more for me on the right side than he is the left. I'd say he's a left lead horse. You know, your chances if you're guessing, guess left lead, you're going to be right 90% of the time. But we don't have this horse bend and give down in here where he does right here. See how that back bends? Now, if you want your horse to move naturally, you've got to get rid of the splint that he runs into when he does bend, called the bar of a saddle tree. A lot of Western saddles will be up over the shoulder on a smooth-shouldered horse like this. He'll still bend, but problems come into play. We got a horse that's noisy with his feed bucket back here, don't we? Problem comes into play when this happens. Whoa, baby, whoa, whoa, whoa. Goodness sake. Yeah, come on, no, come on. Ah, it's all right. That's problem from saddling. That's a bar right through any kind of pad you use. And the horse bending into it because he bends more to the left. He leads with the left. And we have one very sore horse down in the scapula itself as it rotates back and runs into the bar of that saddle tree. Okay. The thing we'll do now is move on back. By the way, if you ride English, if you ride barrel racing saddles typically are short. The bars are not very expensive. They don't flatten out as they should. They're quite sharp in the rear. A barrel racing saddle will often hit a horse on the outside of the bars right in here. A small, cheap saddle will Western. Or a long, cheap saddle might hit it further back. If you ride English, you want to check right where the flaps end. Here, where the sweat flap and the flap goes under the tree, it can create a hell of a pressure point right in here. That's if you ride English. That's 2 layers of leather going over the sharp edge of an angled bar. The bar looking essentially like this, I should say like this, and the 2 layers of leather going over the edge like that, creating a set of knuckles. Under that part of the bar, it gives a very effective seat aid to overcome any interference we have going to the brain from pain up here in this shoulder. A very big default in English saddles that can be fixed by castle cutting those 2 pieces of leather like this and skiving them thin. You no longer have the severe seat aid, and you no longer have a horse that pulls away from the pain in the back, because pain right here directly from some pressure will flatten this croup, just as I can flatten the croup if I simply massage hard enough here. But that's not pain from saddling. That's natural. A little bit here can do that, just boom, if it is a, quote, set of knuckles for those severe seat aids built into your dressage saddle. Now, on back to the back, as hard as we are in the neck, as tight as we are, I would say we could have a little problem on the semi-membranosus. We're a little tense in the hindquarters. Not real bad. Big, powerful hindquarters. Little jump. For these big, powerful hindquarters, we are not overworking very much. Just find a semi-tendinosus right in here. Okay, not too bad. And simply Same on the other side, but not working quite as hard on straining anything it feels like on a semi-tendinosis over here. Yeah, about the same maybe. Not much back here. He's so powerful. He manages to do with these hindquarters, but he's having to make up for a lot in not using the back right and keeping it locked down somewhat. He's having to overuse this levator humeri, and those shoulders are really sore. But all that reaction I got a while ago, you don't get it when he's not rotating that shoulder and he's just standing here. Amazing, isn't it? Now, one more thing, spinous processes. No problem. No problem. That means whatever's been going on in this horse hasn't been going on too long. We have a little tightness in the belly of the muscle, a little bit of knotting right in there, tension, that can be worked out. Oh, my gosh, he said, that's sore. Look at this horse. Very concerned. Okay. We're not going to do the rest of this horse. You have the idea of what to look for. And a deep pressure therapy will go a long way with this horse. Okay, let's do another one. Save the most relaxed, I hope, horse until last. He's just chewing his cud here. He's not too concerned. Okay, fella. Yeah. Come on now. It's all right. Take a little of the apprehension out right here. If that feels good, you think we have much problem? Nah. He likes me already. Okay. These are quarter horses that are all at the same stables here in Jasper, Missouri. They're just owned by different people, ridden in a little different manners. This horse, if I keep doing this, he may go to sleep. No big problem. This is the way your horse should be here on the levator humeri and the attachment point of that muscle. Why do muscles get sore clear into here, down here, and so on from one tight muscle here, the trapezius, which then causes the longissimus to lock down? It's called cooperative antagonism. All muscles work with and against each other. Where one muscle contracts to move a lever, like the bicep, tricep has to release to let the bicep move the lever. But if it releases all the way, too much cooperation, a la fatigue, then the bicep quite possibly can overstretch the tricep and hurt the attachment points. That can happen from fatigue. The next day, the attachment points to the tricep are sore. It travels into the belly. A few days later of the tricep, contraction in the muscle. After that, the bicep has to work harder because the tricep is too antagonistic now. Doesn't release enough. A la, we get some tension in the bicep. A little old hip bone, ankle bone, knee bone song's the idea. And it does go from one end of the horse to the other. So you have a balance in all creatures of cooperative antagonism in muscle action. Every muscle is moving a lever. That's why we're going over the whole horse. The muscles we're dealing with are the ones we are most concerned with. A little bit apprehensive on me there, but see, I'm getting the real natural reaction. And that isn't much. A little bit of work with any horse, he's going to be just like this with any saddle. So either you haven't been ridden enough, fella, or simply you've got too good saddle on. Yeah. Okay. Even a horse that's saddled well be a little tight after a lot of hard, strenuous riding at speed. You can expect it. But just a little tight on the attachment points, and then that goes away quite quickly. Spinous processes, check for spondylitis, no problem. No natural reaction here, folks. Only damage down inside there. And the base of the withers is thoracic vertebra number 8. And 8, 9, and 10 is where the center of movement in this back is. If he really bends his back, the bending action starts there. That means you have more movement front and rear of here. This is the center of movement. That's how you can get, quote, loin rubbing with the fatigued gluteals, fatigued longissimus that do not contract and stiffen the lower back as the horse pushes off. If your horse contracts both gluteals and has the back locked down, he trots more like a cow. That's how a cow trots. Hopefully your horse contracts, if he's pushing off on the right, he contracts the right longissimus, just like I did then, to take a straight step forward. Same with the left. Do it yourself with a long step. You'll feel your back tighten on the same side. The muscles are also named the same. Girthing, we check right through here. No problem. This is good. There are more muscles, by the way. Pectorals come up through here. The abdominal is moving up through here to attach into here. The serratus, a little serratus in here you will find attaching the shoulder to the rib cage. The latissimus under the sheet of muscle here comes right down through here into the shoulders, and there are more muscles that cross over at each other and attach as well in this point than any other. When you have a horse that is not sensitive here, you've got something to brag about, or you have a horse that isn't ridden. I don't know which here for sure, but girthing can be a big problem here. That's why I don't like a real long girth. That's why I don't want a buckle up here. That's why I don't want any lumps under the rigging on a saddle for the stirrup strap to swing back and forth against, because it will put fluid under the skin, tension in the muscle, and cause soaring, so to speak, and a little roaning of hair later. You may see it next year. Okay. We're not talking about dry spots in this video. Dry spots can be from lack of contact behind the shoulder in a short ride. Dry spots can be from great contact over a good-sized area and little or no movement on a short ride. Only until you have your horse sweated right down the middle of that back could you look and see if you had a dry spot, and did it come from what you just rode, or did it come from damage on the skin from previously. And believe me, once it's damaged and it doesn't sweat up, it just doesn't get fixed if the skin and the sweat glands were actually damaged. It's like reading a Ouija board to read dry spots, and if you read a pad, it's worse, because you always have the most movement back here. That'll be the dirtiest part of the pad, the quickest. Then the shoulders will be second. So you can't really read pads. They'll all look clean in the middle. I say, my saddle's bridging. I got all my contact here and here. Ain't got a thing in the world to do with saddling. It's just movement of the horse. Okay, fella. You've got just a tiny bit of a natural reaction here. This horse maybe been ridden a little in the past, but he hasn't got anything that's maybe a 0.1 over natural in the hindquarters. A nice loose hindquarters. Pretty horse. We can go down the other side. We're going to poke under saddle. Are we going to find anything? What do you think? No. And you're looking at the rear of the horse and not the saddling area. I can see that. But we just are not going to have it. Does that feel good? Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, is this side a little tight? You mean you've been ridden a little bit somewhere? Huh? Goodness. Okay, but nothing to talk about. At least we got to show you a horse that has been ridden, been laid off a little while maybe. A horse that's really sore can be laid off for 6 months. We'll give you a real good demonstration with if he's really been ridden a lot and sore. Thank you very much. I hope this video helps you. And palpating your own horse, you are developing a bank of knowledge. I work off my bank of knowledge. I've given it to veterinarians and veterinary universities, and it helps them to step up by taking some of my bank of knowledge and going on developing their own. Every horse is different. Every rider is different. Every sport has different demands. So you've got to check your horse regularly and follow what's happening. And it's your responsibility, not anybody else's. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this.